Yes, the butcher, the baker and the candlestick maker. For the past 3.5 decades, businesses big and small across the whole of Europe have regarded the transit van as an essential tool in the maintenance of their trade. It's as common a part of the modern landscape as lampposts and loading bays. And now there's a brand new one, the Mark IV, available in front drive, rear drive and even 4x4. Now normally vans aren't anything to get excited about, unless for instance they're carrying rock stars en route to gigs.
We were in the 60s. I think that to me was the beginning of it all. The nicest times I think I ever spent. I grew my hair long, I left my first job and I turned professional in a group. And we had a van. And the van we had was a transit. It was a good time to be, a good time to travel.
Why a transit?
Why a transit? Well, after having Austin J2s and comma vans, which majority of them were quite good, but some broke down, the transit became the van with an image. If the group was to be serious, you know, and they say, well, it's a serious band, they've got to have a serious van. So when you turned up, it was all image, you see. So we had this white transit, you see. And of course it had got the space. And everybody travelled together in those days, you know. You had to live in the transit practically.
What do you reckon to this then?
Well, it's a damn sight better than the one I remember, that's for sure.
Have a look.
We had a roadie actually called Pete Murdoch who used to cart our stuff around in the early days in one of the first transits.
Yeah.
It was two-tone, it was sort of red and rust, that one. And one of the longest tours we ever did in a transit was with Talking Heads.
Oh, right.
And we were supporting Talking Heads when they first came to England. And that would have been about 78.
Yeah.
And we did a university tour all around England in this transit. And because we were the support band, we got stuck in the back. And it was incredibly cold. And I do remember the heat never ever got through to the back of the transit.
Oh, right.
It was all soaked up by Talking Heads in the front and us in the back.
I lived in Wolverhampton in the Midlands, right? We used to travel up to strange places called Wick in the north of Scotland. And in fact, I remember one time, because we had long hair, people thought we were the Rolling Stones, you see. And they said, you're not coming into my place, are you? He said, you're a scruffy bunch, you know, I'm going to wreck my bed and breakfast place, you see. So we used to have to sleep in the van. And of course, the thing with the transit, it was big. And you could get beds in the back, you see, and curtains around the side of the windows, if you had windows, that is, you know. But the van was very important, especially the fact of reliability, because you had to get back home, you're still living with your parents, you know. I mean, those were really good days which built a good foundation to Slade, you see, for later on in life.
Meanwhile, back on the road, and we're heading into central London, where the new transit will have to do battle with taxis, gatsos, dispatch riders, traffic lights, traffic wardens, and all manner of hazards and hassles. We're en route to our final rock hero.
Essentially, it's cars that I feel strongly about, and they tend to be cars that were successful from their era. So I'm not particularly interested in new cars or old cars. I'm fairly Catholic in my taste, but so I've got a 1901 Panhard, but it was almost certainly a competition car, and then a Bugatti, a Type 35B, which is perhaps one of the greatest vintage racing cars, and so on. So most of the cars had a fairly important competition history at some point in the last century. I suppose, of course, the music has paid for what could have been a sort of small hobby to become a rather grand hobby. But I mean, I was interested in cars and competition long before, really, before I even started playing the drums. And I think it's a question sometimes asked, and I think whatever I'd done, I'd have probably ended up with at least one old car and racing it. Well, I think it's terrific. They'll be very lucky if they start with anything as good as this, because we certainly didn't.
Must have been a bonding experience having 6 people in such a small space for long journeys.
I think it was, and the journeys were long. There was a tendency to find that you were doing the Isle of Wight one day and the Isle of Man the next, and various places in between. I know I got to know the motorways of England, which were then less complete, pretty well.
Well, Thanks very much, Nick.
Well, pleasure. Thank you.
The Ford Transit is as much a part of rock and roll legend as throwing TVs out of hotel bedroom windows. This new sharp-suited, ultra-fashionable Mark IV offers all the traditional benefits of its predecessors and adds high levels of comfort and luxury to the equation for good measure. These new levels of driver pampering might just herald a new era of laid-back, non-aggressive van driving. Now there's something we could really thank Ford for.